Much or so, Bruff Scott will be here with Books by My Bedside. Rather unusual guest, and one that you perhaps wouldn't have imagined they'd invite onto a programme like Books by My Bedside. Adrian Edmondson, maybe better known as Vivian from The Young Ones, will be discussing his nighttime reading with Bruff Scott right after the break. Should be worth looking at.
Good evening. Our guest on Books by My Bedside tonight made his name as one of the most disgusting individuals ever to hit our TV screens. Playing Vivian, the idiot, psychotic punk in the BBC series The Young Ones, he became an immediate favourite with millions of viewers for his appalling personal habits, atrocious table manners and catastrophic clothes sense. He's been putting this invaluable experience to good use in the Rocky Horror Show, the revival of the hugely successful cult musical of the early 70s, now in London's West End. So, tonight, minus the ring in his nose, let me welcome Adrian Edmondson.
That's right, my dress sense hasn't got much better, has it?
But it's a long time since The Young Ones, lots of other parts, commentaries and things. Does Vivian still haunt you, still linger on?
Well, everyone associates me first with Vivian, which I don't really mind because they seem to think it was quite funny. So I don't mind being remembered as funny.
Did it give you a lot of hassle then?
And I used to get slightly picked on by bruises in pubs, but that's sort of past now because they see I'm just a wimpy git with glasses and there's not going to be much sport in it.
You're playing another very different part, Brad in the Rocky Horror Show, but the West End, a West End run, what does that do to the rhythm of your life?
Well, it's a pretty nice lifestyle. I've never really done it before, but it's rather pleasant. It gives me a lot of time with the kids at home during the day, and then I go to work about 7:30, you know, because the show goes up at 9, so it's a pretty strange lifestyle.
And at the end of the day, when you come back, I mean, you're all up for the show, how does the unwinding go?
Well, it can take different forms. Some nights it's plain drunkenness, some nights it's just tiredness.
Can we, for the purposes of this programme, does it ever descend into books?
It can do, yes. Often I go home and do the crossword, and then go upstairs and start reading.
And take us into books. Did you have books in your background, so to speak, early on?
Well, I learned to read, as we all do. No, I've never been particularly booky. I mean, I must have spent about... I went to university, so I knew how to read, and I studied drama and sort of read quite assiduously, but not for no real purpose, for no real enjoyment. I read because I was made to read. And then I didn't really read for about 5 years when I left university. I didn't read a thing apart from comics. And it was only... I don't know what actually brought the change, but I just sort of... I found Evelyn Waugh, to be honest, and read one of his and thought, well, this is, you know, why didn't no one ever tell me about him? You know, because it was good stuff. So then
Adrian, your first book?
The first book I've chosen is Summoned by Bells by John Betjeman, which is a strange book, I think, because I've never read poetry particularly. Always thought it was rather sort of Nancy thing to do. And, well, no, mostly I found poetry rather dull. And I do actually still, I mean, and since I've read Betjeman, who I think is fantastic, I've tried to read lots of other poets, and I find them very difficult. It's only Betjeman that I find sort of anything I can get to grips with. It's a sort of this blank verse that you can read as if someone's talking in a room, rather than poetry, which is so sort of tortuous that you can't sort of... You're supposed to read it 27 times to find out what the first inkling is about it, whereas this I can understand straight away. But it doesn't diminish the fact that you can keep reading it over and over again, because it's such great emotions, not emotions, just great description of places that he gives you that I enjoy.
It evokes a very different world, of course, and a lost world compared to the punk generation.
Well, yes, but I went to public school, and I'm a very minor public school, and I know sort of vaguely what he talks about, and there's a very small part of me that's a sort of that's sort of hiding in the closet, a sort of old fogey that wants to get out. You know what I mean? And so I enjoy the sort of the form, because you can't be an anarchist, which is right. I mean, when I'm writing, I'm constantly writing just like jokes in words about against the grammar. You can't be an anarchist without having rules to begin with. So I actually enjoy the rules. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
you've got to have
he's
some-
written a whole autobiography, so to speak, in
Yeah.
universe. It's extraordinary to do.
Yes.
Can you read us a bit? Do
Well,
you
certainly.
like reading
I do.
poetry now? I mean,
Yeah.
as you weren't before, but now you've got into it. Do you like
Yeah.
reading this to yourself or to other people?
I read bits out to my wife, and bits that I find particularly amusing.
Well, that's straining this relationship. Read a bit to us.
Yes, all right. Maybe we'll get married afterwards, who knows. Right. This is a bit about his adolescence when he was about 18, and he's laid down for breakfast. He's staying with his mother and father in their little cottage in Cornwall. This is his father speaking. "Just down for breakfast, sir. You're good enough to honour us by coming down at 10. Don't fidget, boy. Attention when I speak. As I was saying, now I look at you, bone lazy like my oldest brother, Jack, a rotten, low, deceitful little snob. Yes, I'm in trade, and I'm proud of it, I am." Black waves of hate went racing round the room. My gorge was stuck with undigested toast. And did this woman once adore this man? And did he love her for her form and face? I drew my arm across my eyes to hide the horror in them at the wicked thoughts. "My boy, it's no good sulking. Listen here. You'll go to Bates and order me the car. You'll caddy for me on the morning round, and this afternoon you'll help me dig for bait. You'll weed the lawn, and when you finish that, I'll find another job for you to do. I'll keep you at it as I've kept myself. I'll have obedience. Yes, by God, I will." "You damn well won't. I'm going out today." Rather pathetic attempt at imitating John Betjeman.
Because people remember him at the end of his life as all sort of rather a gentle old man, but there's
Yeah.
terrific passion in that, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, he was basically someone who let down his father and spent the rest of his life working it out.
Did you have any hang-ups in the, sort of going to father considerations? But do you have any sadness in your childhood, that background, or was it all okay?
No, not particularly. I got sent away to boarding school too soon.
That would be pretty sad.
Yeah, but it's something
You
that's
survived.
overcome.
Can we have another book, please?
Yeah, another book I've just finished reading is The Best of Steptoe and Son, the 1970s sitcom. And I started reading this because I'm working with Rik Mayall at the moment. We're writing a new sitcom. And I thought I'd look at some of the greats. And,
What's the sitcom about?
What, the one
The
we're
one
writing?
you're writing,
Oh,
not
well-
Rag and Bone Men.
Oh, no. It's a different situation. It's a sitcom called Bottom, which is about two men who are at the bottom, which is a kind of similarity between this. But most sitcoms are about, you don't get sitcoms about successful people, very, very rarely. You get To the Manor Born. But all sort of classics, Steptoe and Son and...
Till death us do apart, I suppose, yeah.
The Young Ones. Blackadder. They're all sort of based on people in adversity.
What do you find funniest about this? Have you seen it over the years?
Well, I remember
video?
seeing it as a small child. Sort of my early teens were spent watching television, and I used to laugh a lot at it. And they haven't sort of repeated it much, so I thought I'd read it. And what I found reading it was it actually is more fun to read than it is to see, which sounds odd, but the writing is just sublime. You can. I don't know if when you read, I always speak it out in my head. I read very slowly because I'm actually reading in my head. I might as well be reading it all out loud. So I do the voices in my head as well, and I have a great time. You know.
Did it? I mean, had you remembered the plots before, or was it?
No,
Did it
and
come to you fresh, really?
Galton and Simpson's plot writing is just terrific. I mean, and I think with Steptoe and Son, they sort of surpassed Hancock. Although Hancock was generally accepted as a better performer, their writing on Steptoe and Son is far snappier.
But the mix, getting the mix for a comedy series. I mean, you write it yourself. Would you have ever expected that Two Rag and Bone Men would work? I mean, why did it work so well?
Well, it's not really about rag and bone men. It's about two personalities. All sitcoms are never about the actual situation. I don't like they call situation comedies, because it's about personalities, really. Either the characters... I mean, you could put the Basil Fawlty character and make him a rag and bone man, it wouldn't really matter. It's a question of characters.
And I mean, the trick that they got right, was it the characterization early on, do you think, or was it just the way they write? I mean, that lasted so well, didn't it? 8 series or something.
I mean, Rik and I write very strangely together, because if someone were to publish our scripts, which they probably won't, you'd find that there's hardly a joke in what we write, because we never write a joke. All our jokes are based on characters and a sort of a switch of information rather than a real joke. Whereas Galton and Simpson did that, and they wrote jokes on top.
But you say you're reading it in your head. I mean, when the two of you are writing a sketch, I mean, like when Galton and Simpson were doing it,
Yeah.
are you saying it to each other, or are you?
Yeah. We sit in a room.
And how serious is it then? I mean, are you
Oh, we
having
have
to
a
get
great
after
time.
each other? You do have a great time, do you? Or was it
Yeah,
actually?
It was strange, because we've been working together for about 12 years now, and we used to have a very tortuous time writing, because we always used to do each other down and say, that's not funny, come up with something funny. But now we've sort of relaxed, and we're sort of into the mood. We've actually worked out that it works better if I'm sitting down and he's standing up, strangely enough.
And does one of you write it down? Do you have someone else,
Yeah, I write it
slave
down.
writing it down?
I write it down and he paces up and down. We've talked to other people who write sitcoms in pairs, and they found out that you always have one writer and one pacer, one sitting down and one pacing. And whenever you try and mix up two writing teams, which people occasionally do, write with different partners, you can't put two pacers together, because they just
Great
can't.
new words
they
in the
can't work it
vocabulary.
out. Yeah.
Which was the pacer? Which was the writer at Galton Simpson?
I don't know. I'd love to know.
Is it?
I'll find out one day.
You mean there's always a tradition of comedy going down the years. Where are your roots, do you think? I mean, do you relate directly to that?
Yeah, I mean, the funniest things about when I was growing up were, I caught the very tail end of the Goons, and the Pythons were the major sort of what I used to wet the floor watching. And then there was all these great classics, Step Turn Son, Till Death Do Us Part, Dad's Army, the sort of real good, solid series after series of 70s sitcom with great actors in and really good writing.
But were they? I mean,
And
was
they're all
that the
missing
best
now.
days? I mean,
Well, it does seem like a golden age, doesn't it?
it does looking backward, but maybe we don't. We think always looking back it's more golden.
Maybe we do.
Another book, a golden one.
Yes, another book I've been reading, and I'm slightly disappointed with, to be honest, is Bedside Revisited. As I told you, Evelyn Waugh actually really sort of vitalised my interest in reading. And I've read nearly every other novel. And I've avoided this one because there was that huge TV series. And I started reading it, and I'm finding it really difficult going. And I started it without reading the preface, and I went back to the preface, and it actually says in the preface that it says it's full of rhetorical and ornamental language, which now with a full stomach I find distasteful. I've modified the
He says
grosser
that himself?
passages. Yes, this is
Oh,
what he's
dear.
writing about his own book. I've modified the grosser passages, but have not obliterated them because they're an essential part of the book. But he's generally saying I wrote it at a time in the war when it seemed the right sort of thing to write and the right way to write it. But it's nothing like as funny and as brilliant as his other books. I mean, I think Evelyn is the best novelist I've read, and his books like Handful of Dust I just find so funny. And I'm really disappointed by a lot of the TV presentations. I mean, maybe this has been ruined by, because whenever I read it, I find it hard to get Jeremy Irons out of my head. And then there's this sort of way of doing Evelyn Waugh on film and on TV, which is so reverential and so maudlin and so dull. It's just like, let's get all the nice colonial costumes right and everything. And like in Handful of Dust, did you see the film that they made of it? It's an abomination. It's such a funny story. Even though it's bleak, it's cynical, it's black comedy, but it's intrinsically a laugh a paragraph. And I didn't giggle once at the film.
In the TV series of Brideshead, I mean, there was a lot of speech, the Jeremy Irons voice going along
Yeah.
in your ear. I mean, does that get in the way for you now?
I think that's. I'm doing some
actually-
people down here, but I think if you're making film or TV, you a way to make a book into a film or a TV show isn't to just knock out all the boring bits and sort of say, oh, we don't know how to make that into action, so we'll just get them to say that over some nice shots of girls in flowery dresses and some trees and a nice house in the background. You know, it doesn't work. So they just really didn't try, is my opinion.
How about yourself developing your career into straight acting, into
Yeah.
playing a war character? Would you like to do that? I mean, it's